me to a T. Tiny stick of dynamite, laced with TNT. I'm a firecracker, hot and candy. Now I'll explode if you insist on lighting up my fuse. You know the danger of breaking all my rules. A raging fire can be ignited from a tiny spark. If you don't pay attention, all hell can blow apart. I'm full of fire and passion, well I'm hiding name to please. But if you want to play with fire, be mindful and take heed. Standing up for who I am and all that I believe is making me a firecracker. That's just what I'll be. Firecracker, if you can't take the heat. Firecracker, just stay away from me. Bring me back, sums it up, no handle cautiously. I'm still burning stuff. You feel the burn from me. Boom, boom, bang, bang, pow, pow, pow. I will blow up in your face right here and right now. Handle with care, with respectability. You can lose a finger if you're pointing at me. Firecracker, yeah, you can call me that. Firecracker, 'cause I will fight you back. I'm not out for trouble, but if you come around, I'll go at you tooth and nail. There'll be no backing down. Firecracker,
hello, Butte, America.
Firecracker, that's me to a T.
If you haven't made it to your seats yet, please do so. I'd like to encourage everybody to mix and mingle in the spirit of unity. I'm Jeff Welsh. I'm the Montana editor for the newspapers, the Enterprise's newspapers in Billings, Missoula, Helena, Hamilton, and the 406 MT Sports website, and of course your hometown paper, the Montana Standard. You're all subscribers, right? And just a couple of quick introductions to do here. From the Standard, Matt Hewitt, our managing editor, is here somewhere. Just wave Matt in the back. Christy Constantine, our city editor. And also a special shout out to David McCumber, who was editor here, is now the Lee's West Region editor, but loves Butte and is still here because he loves Butte and he still has fish to catch in the Big Hole River. So before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes. Please mute your cell phones now, if you could. And a couple other things. If you missed it on the way in, you probably saw that we have some signage, no signs, or literature here in the auditorium. We really appreciate that you respect that. And then finally, to keep this as civil as we possibly can, no cheering or jeering, please. We want to give the candidates here every opportunity to answer the questions we know you have, questions our panel has. So please save the cheers and the jeers for the ballot box. One final thank you here. I want to acknowledge Nancy Ron of Montana Tech for all the great work she's put into making this happen. I can say this quietly, go Digs. So once again, thank you for coming out. And without further ado, I'm going to hand the microphone off to our moderator for the evening, our Backroads of Montana host and recent inductee into the prestigious Silver Circle of the Northwest Chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, John Twiggs. John.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for being here tonight. We appreciate your attendance. Just to reiterate what Jeff had mentioned earlier, we appreciate everyone remaining quiet while the candidates are answering the questions. That's very important for us to be able to hear them and get the most out of this evening. I'm sure afterwards we can have a rip-roaring discussion about what was said up here, but it will help keep us on time and be able to hear what the candidates have to say. So in just a few minutes, we will begin the live radio broadcast of this and start the event itself. So in just a few minutes, we'll get started. Thank you.
No, it's not allowed. Isn't there one? There's one set of rules for all of us.
Rules, yeah,
No notes.
That's not what it says.
No notes were given.
That's not what it says. Read the rules.
The rules.
That's not what it says.
You're all given the same rules. No notes.
I'm following the rules. I'm following the rules that you gave us. And I prepared according to the rules. So if you're changing the rule, Heather's on that email as well that said that notes were okay.
Very well.
Good evening and welcome to the Candidate Forum for Montana's U.S. House 1st Congressional District. I'm John Twiggs of Montana PBS, the moderator for tonight. This event was produced in partnership between Lee Newspapers of Montana and Montana Public Radio. We're live in the auditorium on the campus of Montana Tech in Butte, and we're joined by a live audience. We also have all three candidates on the ballot on stage with us. They are Republican Ryan-Zinke, Libertarian John Lamb, and Democrat Monica-Tranel. We have a simple format tonight. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question. After those answers, each candidate will have an additional 30 seconds for a quick rebuttal or follow-up. We have a panel of journalists to question the candidates from Lee Newspapers, the head of the Montana State News Bureau, Holly Michaels, and from Montana Public Radio, State House reporter Shaylee Rager. A reminder, we have asked our audience here to remain silent while the candidates are speaking so we have as much time as possible to hear from them. So let's get started with our first question from Holly Michaels.
As part of organizing this forum, we've asked readers and listeners to submit... Is this better?
Much better.
Okay, starting over. As a part of organizing this forum, we've asked readers and listeners to submit questions they'd like asked to the candidates. The majority of these questions are from Montanans. As things kick off, we'd like to begin with civility and campaign rhetoric. Congress is becoming increasingly polarized, and we live in politically charged times. Candidate Zinke, your campaign is called Monica-Tranel, Manic Monica. Candidate Tranel, your campaign has characterized Ryan-Zinke as a lying, poisonous snake. This has become standard campaign rhetoric. Why do you use it, and what benefit do you think it serves your campaign and the people of Montana? And Candidate Lamb, how do you campaign as a third-party candidate in that environment?
Our first response is from Ryan-Zinke.
You know, this, I think it reflective of the anger in the country. People are angry. I'm sorry. People are angry, and I understand that. And Monica doesn't have anything to run on other than assault my integrity. But there's a few things you should know, is that the assault on my integrity is by the same people, by the way, that assaulted my integrity in D.C. that's on Monica's payroll. Not only that, remember the investigations. Anybody can file an investigation. Anybody can file a complaint. By law, that complaint has to be investigated. That's what a federal investigation, quote, is. In 18 cases, and I'm 18 for 0, in all 18 cases, the conclusion of the investigations were this: no conflict of interest, no violation of a rule, no violation of law. The things I was investigated on, my socks, my dog. I even got investigated on the horse I rode in on.
Next response from Monica-Tranel.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. And as we get started, I want to acknowledge the passing of Art Noonan and the loss to this community. Art was a great steward of democracy, and I'm grateful to Jen Lynch for stepping up as well. So thank you for that. I also call on MTN News to include John Lamb in the debate on Saturday that will be televised in Bozeman. We're here to have you hear all of us, and the only way to get purchased politicians like Ryan-Zinke and the corporate donations that he rides on out of politics is to have all of you hear all of us. So I'm calling on MTN to include John Lamb in that debate. Everything in my ads is true and legal, and I stand on them. There are 2 reports. They are printed out. There are copies available for everybody's here tonight. Inspector General reports finding Ryan-Zinke the lies that he told to investigators and to cover up his corruption. So one came out in February, another came out in August. Read it for yourselves. Don't take his word for it. Don't take mine. Ryan is lying again. It's what he does best. Thank you.
And our next answer from John Lamb.
Thank you so much for everyone being here. I live in a little town called Norris, Montana, over here just near Ennis. I and my wife and 6 of my 12 children are here tonight. They are my biggest support in campaigning because I don't have a campaign manager besides my wife and myself. Big money, I believe, corrupts. That's why we're in this predicament we are here in this country. Large money, I hate it. So I'm running on a non-monetary campaign. It makes politicians corrupt. And I believe the people need a grassroots type candidate to lead this Western District. And I believe I'm that middle guy that can do that for Montana. Thank you.
We now have time for a short follow-up from each of the candidates, and again, we'll begin with Ryan-Zinke.
Well, Monica, you talk about truth, and the first thing you do is lie. The reports, if you read them, at the last report, after 5 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars spent, you know what the report concluded? That I didn't follow the employee handbook and had a lack of candor. I don't know what that means. I answered their questions. They just didn't like the answers. But there's no lie in there, and none of the reports say lie. None of them. All of them say the same thing. I followed the rules. Thank you.
Well, they're right there. Pick them up. Read them for yourselves. That's exactly what they do say, is that Ryan-Zinke lied to criminal investigators, and he said this is, and everything that he said was contradicted by emails, by messages, by a senator, and by multiple people who were involved. So the reports are there. Read it for yourself. Don't take our words for it. And I will say I stand by my ads. They are true. Everything that's in them is true, unlike Ryan-Zinke's ad against me, which is not true. Thank you.
And a final follow-up from John Lamb.
Montanans and the people in this Western District, they deserve a bipartisan person representing them in Congress, someone that can work on both sides of the aisle, someone that can listen to the people, someone who is one of the people and is not a big politician. My passion is to serve people. My passion is to protect the innocent, to protect the people that don't have a voice. And thank you.
Our next question is from Montana Public Radio's Shaylee Rager.
Joe Biden was sworn in as president in 2021. Do you believe he was duly elected? And if you are elected to this seat, what role do you have in fostering trust or changing the election system?
Our first response this time from Monica-Tranel.
Thank you for the question. And the first role is developing trust. And what I have done to do that across Montana, I've spent my professional career here, my 25 years working for you in Montana, delivering for you, working for Montana Tech employees. I've put almost 40,000 miles on my minivan, showing up, talking to you, talking to city councils, county commissioners, meeting you where you are and connecting with our communities. That's the first step in building trust, is meeting you and connecting with you, being available, showing up for debates, 10 of them. John Lamb and I have shown up for all of them. So that's the first step in building in trust. Our elections are free and secure, and it's irresponsible and nonsense to say anything else like the platform that Ryan-Zinke's party has embraced. I know, and I've talked to the election officials across this state, people who have spent 30 years who are getting death threats. It's irresponsible, it's wrong, our elections are fair and secure, and we need to stand by that and stop that dangerous rhetoric.
Our next answer from John Lamb.
I trust you, the people, as voters, to if you don't like us, vote us out. If you pick the best candidate for the position, we have a big dilemma in this country. That's one reason I'm running, is the people deserve a new voice, a new face, just a common person that's going to represent you, the people. I can only say that I can only trust what the election results are. I am not an expert in it. Joe Biden is the president of this country, whether I like him or I like Trump. I did not vote for either one of them. I voted for Jo Jorgensen because I felt that she was the lesser of the two evils. So my main concern is being a voice for the people, being that new voice that can actually represent bipartisan for you. You the voters, need to choose.
And our answer from Ryan-Zinke.
I think Montana does a pretty good job of elections. I think we're good people. I think as long as people stay vigilant and look at the elections and get out there and do our part. I'm absolutely against federal takeover elections because, quite frankly, I don't trust the federal system. I ask you this: what branch, division of the United States government do you trust? And the elections, we should be concerned because your vote should count. And when there's doubt cast, as the FBI has shown, Russian collusion, they were involved. FBI evidently talked to Mr. Zuckerberg and put the finger on the scale and said suppress stories about Hunter Biden's laptop. When does that happen and why? So when those things come up, we need to pursue them. Our election system is sacred, and it's all of us to make sure that elections are fair. And if we question, then let's question it. But in Montana, I think we do a pretty good job. I've talked to most of the county clerks. They're pretty convinced that if there was some tomfoolery, it was small. But all of us have a job to do to make sure the elections are safe, secure, and one vote is one person, and let's make sure we do it right.
Time now for a quick follow-up, and we'll begin again with Monica-Tranel.
Interesting, Ryan, that you say our elections are done well in Montana when 15 of the 16 counties came in the primary and you were not going to win and waited for the Lincoln County results to come in for 3 days. You sent out a fundraising email saying the Democrats had actually stolen the Republican primary elections. That is a kind of irresponsible and dangerous rhetoric that's wrong and needs to stop. Our elections are safe and secure, and when you lose, I expect you to concede. Thank you.
A follow-up from John Lamb.
As a libertarian, I'm for limited government, limited federal government, especially in our lives. I believe in state and local control, and we should turn everything back, take the federal government out of it, put it back into the hands of the states where it belongs. Let us as locals make those decisions in our local cities, counties, and state.
And final follow-up from Ryan-Zinke.
I think the Constitution is clear. The constitutions of the states have primacy over elections. Again, I think the elections in Montana are run pretty good. I think there's always vigilance, make sure people watch the polls, make sure that there's confidence in our election system. But I think in Montana does a pretty good job. I can't say the same thing for other states, but Montana, I think we do a good job.
We move on to our next question from Lee Newspaper's Holly Michaels.
Inflation has affected Montana families everywhere from the grocery store to the gas pump. What are 3 ways you would work in Congress if elected to this seat to address inflation?
And we'll begin our first answer with John Lamb.
I would end the Fed first because we have way too much spending in the federal government. I am a big fan of Ron Paul. Ron Paul had, I believe, every answer right in my book. I got to shake Ron Paul's hand here about 3 months ago in Reno, Nevada. It was my honor and privilege. We need to bring these things locally back home and let the locals fix this issue. We have horrible homeless over in Bozeman. Missoula, I drove through Missoula just yesterday in the day with 6 of my children and my wife, seeing the campers in some of it. In Bozeman, the tents, the campers all over. We have the resources right here in Montana to fix that. I don't believe the federal government should intervene in that because they can't fix anything right now. There are problems and problems and problems in Congress. I would resort everything right back here to the state of Montana where it belongs.
Our next answer from Ryan-Zinke.
Well, inflation, by every economist, would say there's 2 critical factors: energy costs and spending. I can tell you Monica wants to kill the American energy, which will affect Montana's economy and, quite frankly, national security. And on spending, you can't say you want to control spending when you support $133 trillion of spending, as Monica do. That's new spending. $133 trillion of new spending. Because when you add up Build Back Better, you add up Green New Deal, you add up the Inflation Reduction Act, and you add up Medicare for All, that's $133 trillion. And when you go after American energy, particularly hydrocarbons, this is what Montana is feeling. We drive bigger trucks. Our distances are further. Our supply chain is further. And so when you raise energy costs, it affects everyone, fertilizer, food, across the board.
And our next answer from Monica-Tranel.
On the trail across this new district, the 16 counties and the 2 tribal nations, I have talked to so many people, and the 3 top issues facing Montana right now are housing, housing, and housing. So this question of affordability is one that I have put out a plan that addresses it. It's at monica-tranel.com. I'm the only candidate in this race with a concrete, actual plan with details about how I will get things done. The things that we need to start doing to put our people back to work in good jobs is getting decent housing available, first of all. In Kalispell, Class 1 Technologies, they can't find enough houses for people. Our teachers make $30,000 a year here in Montana, the lowest salary in the country. Houses in Bozeman are $800,000. That doesn't work. My affordability plan addresses this by finding ways to have childcare available for our workers, to make housing available, for education, to make that reasonable and available. We have to get a grip on the affordability crisis that's facing Western Montana, and that takes real plans, which I have and I've set forth, and I've brought hundreds of millions of dollars of real investment to Montana in the last 20 years when I have been here working for you and with you. Thank you.
Time for the quick follow-up, and we'll begin again with John Lamb.
The question really goes back to you, the voters. How much more can you afford to pay in taxes? How much more of a burden can you afford to pay the $22 trillion that we're in debt now, to keep adding to this debt? We can't afford it as Americans. People are losing their homes. People are losing their jobs, their lifelong ranches that they've had. A gentleman just over here in Bozeman just had $13,000 in taxes due, and he was going to lose his home. He had to start selling things. He's a veteran. He's on a fixed income. He can't afford $13,000 in taxes. My taxes this year on my property in Norris is right at $5,000. I have 12 children. Where am I going to go? I'm going to have to sell my farm if this keeps going up and have to move somewhere. We can't afford more and more spending. I will vote no on any new spending in Congress. I will not put the burden continued on the taxpayer.
And another follow-up from Ryan-Zinke.
Well, again, number one issue that I'm feeling as I go around Montana is inflation. And inflation is energy, which Monica is an environmental attorney that kills energy, especially the hydrocarbons, that makes this economy move. She wants more taxes, because if you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, any Montanan that makes $200,000 or less is going to get a bigger tax bill. And then you got 87,000 troopers coming our way from the IRS that Monica also supports. And Monica, the Inflation Reduction Act isn't awesome. It's just the opposite. So inflation, you got to drive down the cost of energy. You got to drive down spending. That will drive down inflation. That will drive down the interest rates so people actually can afford a house.
And final follow-up from Monica-Tranel.
I've brought hundreds of millions of dollars of new projects, good jobs, and real investment here to Montana over the last 25 years. In the meanwhile, Ryan has taken $460,000 from ConocoPhillips. Look it up for yourself. It's online. You can track that. Believe what you read. And he's put that in his pocket. So as we're paying higher prices at the pump, every time you fill up your tank, think about how much of that is going into Ryan Zinke's pocket. I have been here with you, delivering for you on the ground. But back to inflation, let's look at what we're sitting in right now here at Montana Tech, Flathead Valley Community College. We've got some really tremendous ways of getting our folks out working in good jobs, and this auditorium and this school demonstrates that. Thank you.
We move on to our next question from Montana Public Radio's Shaylee Rager.
The U.S. Supreme Court's Dobbs decision removed federal protection for abortion access in the country. Can you clarify at what gestational age and under what circumstances you believe abortion should be allowed, if at all?
Our first answer from Ryan-Zinke.
Well, Monica has lied about my position, and she has lied to women about it. Abortion's a tough issue. And I'm pro-life, and I'm proud of it. But I'm also a father, and I'm a husband. And life isn't perfect. So I always have believed that banning it is too harsh. But Monica's position of open-ended all the way up to birth is barbaric. So I don't believe that, and that's not what Montana is. I do think we ought to focus on birth control over the counter and give alternatives to young women that face a very difficult decision. Again, I wish abortion wasn't there, but life isn't perfect, and I understand there's a lot of circumstances that force a woman into that very difficult decision. But I'm pro-life, and I'm proud of it. But this open-ended, anytime, any place, right up to the moment of birth, that's not Montana, and that's barbaric.
Our next response from Monica-Tranel.
Thank you. This is about privacy and freedom, and I am the only candidate in this race who stands unequivocally with you for your privacy to make your own healthcare decisions, to make decisions about your body, and to decide when, whether, and how you will become a mother or a parent and how to use your resources. I'm the only candidate who stands with you on privacy and freedom. And let's talk about what's at stake here. 10 attorney generals have issued over 50,000 subpoenas to Google for location data and geofence warrants, finding out where you are and what you're searching. Who here has a cell phone? You are at risk of having your attorney general doing a subpoena to find your information about where you're going and what you're looking for. And if they can do that for abortion, they can do it for hunting, they can do it for buying a gun, they can do it for everything and anything you do. The stakes are very high. And Ryan, you voted against every abortion bill. You voted against women's health care. You voted against contraception. So don't tell me you're pro-life when you're voting against education, you're voting against money, you're voting against children, you're voting against families. That's not pro-life.
And answer from John Lamb.
I'm 100% pro-life. I believe life starts at conception. Life is very important. I have a young son here. He was born premature at about 4 pounds, way early. The doctors gave us that decision. He lived. He's a baby. He's not just a fetus. Life is very important. I vote to protect all life, every life, the life of the unborn, the life of the elderly, the life of the disabled. I am 100% pro-life. I was 100% for the overturn of both Roe versus Wade.
Time now for the quick follow-up, and we'll begin again with Ryan-Zinke.
I think the decision was correct because the decision of abortion is not in the Constitution. It's not a constitutional decision. It's up to the states. But again, Monica lies because my position hasn't changed. I think a ban is too harsh. But I think open-ended, as Monica just said, a woman's privacy doesn't go all the way up to a child being born. At some point in time, a child's life matters. It's a heartbeat. It's a child. So to say that, life doesn't matter, it does to me. I think it does to Montanans too. But to think you're going to take an unborn child's life the moment before birth is acceptable in Montana, no.
Follow-up from Monica-Tranel.
Abortion is about privacy and freedom, and that is what one of us will vote on. Absolutely, 100%. And this is not about states' rights because Lindsey Graham just introduced a bill and Steve Dean signed on to it, and the Montana Republican Party has said it is absolute ban on abortion, no exceptions, not for rape, incest, or even to save the life of a mother. And that's the party that Ryan has stands with, and he has never disavowed that platform. That's how severe and extreme their position is. I am with you. I am with you for privacy. I'm with you for freedom. And one of us will be voting on that this fall. So when you cast your vote on November 8th, you think about the fact that I am the only candidate here who is standing with you unequivocally, unapologetically, clearly for your privacy and for your freedom. And I will never back down from that fight for Montana. Thank you.
Final follow-up from John Lamb.
A doctor just recently I spoke to, he said when he sees a pregnant woman, he has 2 patients, not just one, an unborn child and a mother.
Our next question is from Holly Michaels.
Montana is already feeling the effects of climate change through longer and more intense fire seasons and more extreme weather patterns like flooding in Yellowstone this spring and the ongoing drought hurting the agriculture industry. What, if anything, do you believe should be done to limit greenhouse gas emissions, and what can be done to help the workers transition if your plan calls for a change in the energy industry?
Our first response from Monica-Tranel.
Thank you. This is an incredibly exciting moment in our world and in our state. Montana has tremendous natural resources. We have winter peaking wind that we can send to the west. We have a history, and Butte, America, is well-versed in our history of using our resources and making money off of them. So Colstrip 1 and 2 are shut down, and that generation is completely replaced by wind, and that has brought $217 million to 5 counties. In Beaverhead County, the tax base is $1 billion. They have a solar project there that brings $500 million of new taxable revenue to that county. Here in Butte, at the industrial park, you're looking at $1 billion new investment for a hydrogen project. In Libby, we are looking at reopening some mills to be able to use the wood there and use the forest to manage them appropriately and to turn that into good energy. This is an incredibly exciting opportunity, and the Montana that I grew up in, that I love, that I know is one that embraces the problems that we have, and we work together. This is a new time for us, and we can do it, and we can do it well, and we can make it work for Montana, and I'm positioned to lead that charge. I've spent 20 years working on this for Montana, bringing money to Montana, keeping money in your pockets because I was there, and I will be there with you and for you in Congress. Thank you.
Response from John Lamb.
I don't believe the federal government should be involved in this. This is up to Montana again. When elected to Congress, I will protect Montana's sovereignty and its rights in these decisions. We have some of the most beautiful state land here in Montana. We manage our state land even better than the federal lands that Montana has, that they're poor maintenance. They're not managing our BLM lands properly. We have more fires in our BLM lands than our state lands. We need to turn these federal lands back over to the control of the state. Let the states manage these. We have proven here in Montana that we can do it because of our state lands and how well we have protected them and preserved them. So again, the federal government isn't the answer. It needs to go back to the state and let the states decide this.
And our next answer from Ryan-Zinke.
Well, when I was secretary, we went from 8.3 million barrels a day to 12.5 million barrels a day, and we're the world's largest exporter of energy. But we also lowered emissions, and we had the best safety record in the history of this country. There's a reason, because American energy is cleaner, better, our technology is better, and we do it better than anyone in the world. You look at Russia, Russia is 41% dirtier. So Monica's idea of making Montana a giant wind farm and taking our water and converting it to hydrogen and ship it out someplace else is nuts. And Northwest Energy is raising rates. You know why? Because Monica sued them. And so when Northwest Energy can't build hydro plants or hydrocarbon plants when the wind doesn't blow, guess what? There's no power. And so rates go up and they have to buy it from somewhere else. And remember, Northwest Energy is in Butte, here. And they are a public group that is responsible. So yes, energy is important in this country, but to think you're going to make Montana one giant windmill and hydrogen is going to provide the power is just simply nuts.
Time now for a short follow-up. We begin with Monica-Tranel.
Thank you. It's Northwestern Energy, which you would know if you lived here in Montana and paid bills to them. In fact, I actually
you're gonna get a lot bigger bill.
Reclaiming my time. I actually would say and point to the record, and you can search this online. I've kept $10 million in your pockets because I was there alone. I went into court against Northwestern, and I kept money in your pockets for you. I've stood up to corporate monopolies, and this is in my affordability plan. I talk about energy. I talk about standing up to corporate monopolies and putting your money to work for you. As we speak, millions in Florida do not have power. We need to talk, and there's the incredible drought across Montana. It was 95 degrees in Billings yesterday. This is an issue we are going to live with and address whether we want to or not. We may as well make it work for Montana, and I'm positioned to do that. Thank you.
Response from John Lamb.
Again, we don't need the federal government involved in this. Montana right now, because of your tax money and all the other money that has collected, we have $1.5 billion in extra money in Montana that our legislators here in Montana can decide whether to give it back to the taxpayers, use it wisely for Montanans to take care of the housing issue, take care of the forest that we need to fix. We have the finances here. We don't need the help of the federal government. I will vote for Montana's sovereignty on these issues.
And final follow-up from Ryan-Zinke.
Why again, Northwest Energy is raising rates for a reason. Because when they don't have power, when the wind doesn't blow, and they're forced into a box, they got to buy it from somebody else. It is better to produce energy in this country under our regulation than to watch it get produced overseas with no regulation. And lastly, I'm a Navy SEAL. I spent most of my life fighting for someone else's energy. I can tell you, you don't want to see what I've seen. And it is better produced here in this country, American energy, all the above, than watch it get produced overseas, period.
We'll move on to our next question from Shaylee Rager.
The National Center for Education reported last year that fatal school shootings reached their highest point ever since the start of data collection. After 19 kids and 2 teachers were killed in the Uvalde school shooting in Texas earlier this year, a survey of 875 school teachers, principals, and administrators found they support more restrictions on gun sales and funding for mental health over things like adding security features, arming school employees, or boosting school police. Does Congress have a role in preventing future school shootings? And if so, what is it?
Our first response from John Lamb.
I'm 100% pro-gun. Our Second Amendment is part of the founding documents of this country. I believe in shall not be infringed. We can't take guns away from good people to stop bad people. We have to put guards in the schools if we need to, arm the teachers. I'm for all kinds of options, but we have a right, a God-given right to have a gun, not just a constitutional right. The Constitution just backs that God-given right up. We have the right to defend ourselves against bad people. If you take the guns away, what's going to happen? We're only going to have bad people that don't obey the laws anyway. I believe in deregulating the gun laws.
Our next answer from Ryan-Zinke.
I'm pro-gun. You ain't taking the guns away from Montana. And Monica wants to ban assault rifles, semi-automatics, and I think Montana won't do that because Montana looks at our legacy of weapons and guns, and we honor that tradition. Schools, we should provide protection in schools. And mental health, that's a huge issue. But I'm a believer that we need to relook at our mental health across the board. When we took mental health and we said we'll push it to communities and families, it's not working. It is not working. So maybe we should look at institutionalizing again and looking at how to address homeless and mental health. Because when sheriffs pull up to a driveway and you have someone who's clearly deranged, what they do is they wrap them up, they send them to Warm Springs, and in 10 days they're right back on the street. We need to find a better way to do that because it's killing, literally killing our people.
And our final answer from Monica-Tranel.
Thank you. On the trail in this last 15 months of campaigning across this new district, I've done ride-alongs with law enforcement, county sheriffs, city police. I've met with teachers. I've visited schools. I've talked with our county commissioners. And everyone wants to keep our communities safe. I grew up on a ranch in eastern Montana. I understand the Montana gun culture. There are 27 amendments to our Constitution. I support them all. And what we have to do, and what I have heard from the community, from you, in my conversations with you, how do we handle this issue? What you have told me, conservative folks have said they support longer background checks. That's a reasonable way to keep people safe. And so let's look at that. And the conversations are, how do we keep our communities safe and keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people? Because our law enforcement, they need to know the good guys from the bad guys. And they want that too. We all want our communities safe, and we all understand that I support the amendments to the Constitution, and I will just say, like at the very outset of this debate, Ryan is not documenting any of the statements he's saying with any evidence or support. So just ask him, where are you getting those things?
Time now for our short follow-ups, and we'll begin with John Lamb.
Again, the federal government, the documents are already there. We have the Constitution. The federal government has no say-so in our state issues and our guns rights because we have a God-given right to have a gun. In Congress, I will protect and swear allegiance to that Constitution to protect all the amendments of the Constitution, including the First and our Second Amendment, 100%, shall not be infringed.
Our next follow-up from Ryan-Zinke.
Well, I can tell you where I got it, Monica. I got it from our format in Missoula when you said it should be up to the local communities to decide on gun control. So that means a community like Missoula can violate the Constitution. That's pretty clear. And if you're so concerned about police, then why are you the legal counsel for Montana 350, which advocates for defunding the police? And you can't deny it because they say significantly divert their funds. So that is also a defund. And as a head legal counsel, you know that.
And a final follow-up from Monica-Tranel.
So for what happened at the Missoula debate, I would direct everybody to openmontana.org. There's a transcript, a searchable transcript, and a searchable video, and anything that you want to hear or see is on that website. So you will see it there. With respect to Montana, I believe deeply in representative democracy. I believe in our communities, and I believe in you. And yes, I do believe in working for you and representing you and serving Montana because I'm in this for Montana, for you, for my home. I only have one. It's here. I'm not going anywhere. And I will represent you and your views in Congress, and I will never make any apology for doing that. Thank you.
And our next question is from Lee Newspaper's Holly Michaels.
Native Americans make up about 9% of Montana's population. In June, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of allowing state law enforcement to prosecute non-Native people who commit crimes against Native people on reservation land. Experts and tribal leaders said the ruling undermines tribal sovereignty. Should Congress have a role in upholding the sovereignty of tribal nations?
And our first answer will be from Ryan-Zinke.
Well, as a former Secretary of Interior Bureau of Indian Affairs fell under me, I've taken the position that nations are sovereign. They are. By treaty or by Congress, a nation is sovereign. And so I do respect the sovereignty of our nations. I think we should coordinate with them on law enforcement. As Secretary on the drug problem, we've created a task force. We brought all the law enforcement from within Interior, and we asked and coordinated with the nations before we entered the tribal property, and we coordinated together on law enforcement. So I think on questions like law enforcement, you have to look at where the treaty is, you have to look at the agreements, but you have to respect sovereignty because they are sovereign nations.
Our next response from Monica-Tranel.
To the answer, will I, as your representative in Congress, work with our two tribal nations that are part of this district and uphold their sovereignty? Yes, absolutely. And I will just point out that when Ryan-Zinke was secretary, he stopped the transfer of the bison range to the CSKT. That has finally been transferred. It's happened. And those are the ways that we need to listen to and learn from and work with our partners on the tribal nations. I've met with the tribal councils. I've gone to the Salish Kootenai College. John and I actually had a debate there. Ryan didn't think it was worth his time to show up on that tribal nation. So we have been there. I've been there. I've talked with all of the folks on these sovereign nations, and I will work with them. There is a lot of work to be done. There is a lot of change happening right now. The Secretary's report about the boarding schools. We have real work to do, and there is a lot of healing to be done. We need to listen, we need to learn, and I will work with our partners on these tribal nations to lift up their cultures and start that healing process as they see fit. Thank you.
And our next answer from John Lamb.
I would like to ask Leonard Peltier this question. Leonard Peltier has been in prison for 50 years because of an overreaching federal government upon sovereign lands. On the Pine Ridge Reservation in 1970s, the federal government went in to sovereign land and killed Indians, arrested many. Leonard Peltier has been set in prison for 50 years because of this. If it wasn't for an overreaching federal government, Leonard Peltier would be free right now. I would reach out to Biden. Pardon Leonard Peltier. Let him go. He shouldn't be in prison for 50 years. We have many innocent prisoners across this whole country. Native Americans in many federal prisons. Leonard Peltier is in a federal prison in Florida. And I reach out and ask anybody to keep advocating for his release.
Time for a follow-up on this question. We begin with Ryan-Zinke.
I think we've answered the question pretty well, and then I believe in sovereignty. I believe the nations have their rights. I think you ought to honor treaties. I think over the course of time, we've broken a lot of treaties. And so I don't think we should break any more treaties. I think we should work with the tribes as neighbors. There's a lot of issues in Montana. I'm pretty confident that we can work together to solve all those.
Follow-up from Monica-Tranel.
Thank you. I agree with Ryan-Zinke on this. We have broken a lot of treaties, and we do need to work to repair that trust. And part of that is showing up and having the conversations and having meaningful relationships and establishing those bridges that need to happen. So when I was in Browning at the Blackfeet powwow days, I met Emery, who is studying the Blackfeet language. And the Salish Kootenai College is working to restore and print a lot of the languages that have been lost. These are efforts that are underway that we can work with them, and we can try to rebuild the trust that has been broken, to go back to the first question. And I will work to do that, as I have been doing the last 15 months here on the ground. Thank you.
And final follow-up from John Lamb.
My main reason for running as a libertarian is for limited government, sovereignty and freedom for all of us. Native Americans are top on that list, but every one of us are free people in this great country. I advocate for sovereignty and freedom for all of us to make our own choices. No victim, no crime.
And our next question is from Montana Public Radio's Shaylee Rager.
This is our final question for the evening. Veterans account for 10% of Montana's population, and in a rural state, they face many challenges to getting the health care they earned. If elected to this seat, what would you do to ensure the VA provides veterans their benefits, including physical and mental health care?
Our first response from Monica-Tranel.
Thank you for the question about our veterans. So Montana does have one of the highest vet populations, and many of those folks reside in this new Western District. So the PACT Act last summer that Senator Tester was working on that would have given greater benefits to our vets, that was being torpedoed through a game by the Republicans, and Steve Daines was fist bumping on the floor, making fun of our vets. That is wrong. And Ryan-Zinke refused to speak out and stand with our vets. I did. I came here to Butte, and I released my Vets on the Trail with Tranel, and I am proud to have been endorsed by so many of our vets. And I want to thank you for your service. Throughout this district, I have talked with vets, World War II vets, our Vietnam vets, all of our vets from so many different wars and conflicts. I will stand with you, as I have over the 15 months, traveling on this trail, listening to you, hearing you, and understanding and caring about your issues, and standing with you when Ryan-Zinke wouldn't.
Our next answer from John Lamb.
One of the best ways to protect our vets is to end the next war. Quit putting our troops and our veterans in bad situations where we're in long-standing wars for 20 years. I met this morning in Missoula with the Montana Veterans Association here in Montana, and I had a long talk with the gentleman that was explaining to me some of the main issues that we're having here in Montana and in the state. We still have over 20 veterans every single day that commit suicide here in the United States. Montana is the highest per capita right here in Montana for veterans that commit suicide. This is a situation that needs to be fixed. We can't look for the federal government to fix it. They haven't fixed anything. The only thing they can do is get us $22 trillion in debt. We have to fix this as a community, as people, as Montanans.
And our next answer from Ryan-Zinke.
Well, John, I think you're going to have to explain two things that you've said. The military is a sacred cow, and we need to make it hamburger. And you also said, thinking that the military fights for freedom is like believing kids with Santa Claus. I can tell you that's disgusting. And as a veteran, I know the issues of veterans, believe me. I've lived it. The VA is broke. The VA is broke. And it probably needs to go in the yards and refitted from the ground up. Our veterans face a lot of challenges. They do. We're recovering from a war of abandonment. We're recovering from a lot of PSD, of significant injuries. And our veterans are hurting. Most of the veterans want choice, they want access, and they want quality care. I think the veterans deserve that. And I don't think the VA is delivering it.
Thank you to the candidates. We are approaching the end of our hour, so we're going to move now to closing statements. We want to hear from each of the candidates and their final thoughts. We had a drawing before the event to determine the order, and our first closing statement will come from John Lamb.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to what we stand for, what we are going to promise you when we get to Congress. I can guarantee you that I will be that voice if you choose to elect me. I will be that voice that will work with both sides of the aisle according to the Constitution of the United States to protect individual rights, individual sovereignty within the state, to keep big government out of our lives, less spending, the burden on the taxpayers. We can't afford more. You've heard all these issues. The more federal government we have in our life, the less freedoms we're going to have. They've been restricting us for years and years and years by cutting away our Second Amendment, taking away our First Amendment, limited in jury trials, not giving us a chance at a speedy trial and a fair trial. And I've been an advocate for prisoners for many, many years, fighting, and I can tell you our court systems are corrupt. Our politicians are corrupt. Congress isn't the answer to fix all these issues, but I will be that voice to hold Congress accountable to us, the people, and to the Constitution of the United States.
Our next closing statement from Ryan-Zinke.
Well, you've heard it. I don't think there's a bigger difference, in elections between the three candidates. I'm from Montana. I was born in Montana. I have a track record of energy independence from America. I have a track record of fixing our parks and forests. Monica, on the other hand, she stands lock shoulder with Nancy Pelosi's agenda. And I'll tell you why. More spending, $133 trillion of more spending. More taxes, both on Montanans, your health care, soft on crime. And it is true, Monica, about you're willing to release criminals. And you did defend a criminal. Not only a criminal, but a child rapist. And in Montana, we don't defend child rapists, we throw them in prison. And we certainly don't elect officials that stand to get under released. As far as energy goes, you can't kill American oil and gas, because if you do, it will cause havoc. You want $10 a gallon gasoline? Vote for Monica. And John, you said you love Rand Paul, but you cannot be a Rand Paul fan unless you respect borders. And your comment that we should not have a border between Mexico and the U.S. is unsound, unsafe. Without a border, we don't have a country. So look, this election is important because it will determine the direction of our country. The direction of our country. There's different visions. My vision is I love this country. I respect this country. I want our schools to teach the right things. Puberty, blockers, gender transformations, boys playing girl sports? No. I'm adamantly against it. And I hope you are too. So when you look at this election, I want you to think carefully about what you believe. Because I do believe in America, and I believe that we can fix it. But also I believe that there's two oars in a boat. I'm the right oar, and I do understand there's a left oar. And in order to turn this country around, we're going to have to work together. Otherwise, this country will fail. So with that, God bless, and God bless America.
And our final closing statement from Monica-Tranel.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Democracy is what we do. It's you showing up. It's an action word. It's not what we think. It's not what we feel. It's what we do. And you have all done it tonight. So thank you very much for being here. And thank you for hosting. And I call again on MTN to include John Lamb on Saturday in the only televised debate that we will have. I grew up in eastern Montana as the sixth of 10 children. I rode in the middle of our Olympic 8. As an Olympian, I took an oath to represent our country and to compete fairly. And I did that. I lived up to that oath. I understand, as a lived experience, the value and the power of the middle. And I know, having been left behind on family trips, how easy it can be to overlook the middle. But it's the backbone of our democracy. And as we stand here in Butte, America, where my life changed forever because I became a mother here. I gave birth to my first daughter. I know that you have the story, you have the knowledge to lead the way in bringing the middle back together. What I have heard over and over and over again as I have been on the trail through this new district, people are yearning for connection, for community, to work together to face the immense challenges we have. And we can do that because we're Americans and we know how to step up and face hard times and challenges. And you, Butte, have showed us how to do that, and I commit to you to leading the way. And you know that I will serve you here in Montana. You are sending me to Congress. 70% of my campaign donations come from you. Thank you. In contrast, 6% of Ryan-Zinke's money comes from Montana. We serve the interests of those who have sent us there. We need to rebuild trust. We need to restore America, the middle class, and privacy and freedom are what you are going to have on your ballot. So understand, I am the only candidate who will fight for your privacy, for your freedom, and to restore an affordable middle class. Please vote for me on November 8th, and I will work for you, and I will make you proud to have me in Congress as your representative, something we've not had for a long time. Thank you, Butte.
We want to thank the candidates and their campaign staffs, our audience here in the auditorium, our incredibly well-behaved audience in the auditorium. Thank you for that. You were wonderful tonight. And of course, our audience listening at home. This event was produced in partnership between Lee Newspapers of Montana and Montana Public Radio. Once again, thank you for joining us, and good night.
Good night.